Hey everyone, and welcome back to the fourth installment of my tutorial video series. Today we're gonna go over how to use Adobe Premiere Pro to show your data, to highlight data. And this will be useful for your project within urban informatics and video making. Now, I'm already in Adobe Premiere Pro 2023, which is the application of choice that I'm using to create my video and animations. And you would have access to Adobe Premiere Pro if you are a Swinburne student, because you would have access to the Adobe Cloud, of which allows you to be able to download these applications. For this particular project that we're doing at the moment, we should have Adobe Premiere Pro 2023, Adobe Illustrator. Doesn't have to be 2023, but I prefer the 2023 version. We should have Adobe Illustrator, and of course have access to Mapbox, which I will just demonstrate to you what animation we're making today, which is just essentially a cross dissolve of highlighting a park. Within this area, there's a green corridor that runs along where the train track is located, all the way from Cosmo Park North in South Yarra to Markham Reserve in Malvern East. We can see that from the video, we mainly just wanted to highlight the green corridor and to set different parks within the area. Now, all of this can be created with Mapbox and then manually done within Adobe Illustrator. If you go into Mapbox, let's go out into style so that we can start on the home page. I already have my project done here in Sunnington, and let me hide all the items so I can demonstrate to you how I did it in step by step. So what you would have in the beginning is this base map, which I created using the customization by changing the color theme to monochrome and then adding this watercolor by adding a new layer, custom layer, and adding a data called Mapbox Street V8. And I chose water as the filter, and with the fill type I changed the style and added this blue color. Now, afterwards, I then found a data online that shows the different municipality within Melbourne, and highlighted the Sunnington area, as you can see from this layer. So I input the data, change the filter to have the LGA name shown Sunnington, and change the type to a line to have this pink line outline of the Sunnington area. And then what I also did was essentially just copy and paste it via duplicating the layer via this button here, and then changing that into a fill type instead. To get this pink fill, you have to also change the opacity to 0.58. And then afterwards, I wanted to show all the parks within Sunnington. In this case, it's going to show all the parks within the state of Victoria. And so if I unhide this layer right here, what I essentially did was just adding a new layer, change the data to Mapbox Street V8, and then change the filter into land use. And within going into more detail, going into filters, I added a condition where the type is forestry, farmland, grass and green, picnic site, park, villages, and wetland forests. And yeah, once you've done that, you go into style, and I just change it to the screen to highlight the parks. And yeah, it should show up right there. Now the next thing is essentially I wanted to really highlight Sunnington and make it stand out. So I added a background layer, and that's in gray. If I unhide right here, I meant to say that I wanted to highlight the parks mainly, and so I added this background layer where essentially it will have a have our map at a opacity of this gray color at 0.75, and it will highlight all the parks a little clearer. And so after I finish that, I'm happy with how my map turned out, and so I just print it, and you can move it around to make sure that it fits into what you want. And you can also change the dimension of the images as well with this panel here, but I just chose the standard map box printed layout. And you click print, and then you will have that in your folder right here. Now, what we want to do is create 3 different images from that one image. This is the second image, third image, and final image. All of this was done using Adobe Illustrator. Now, when I go into Adobe Illustrator, I already have all of my items already done, but we mainly start off with having our base map exported into Adobe Illustrator. And then the next step would be to create a compound path of the Sunnington area to highlight essentially just that area, and also drown out all the parks that's not within the Sunnington area. What you would do is, using this pen tool, you would manually draw out the Sunnington Council and then draw the frame and create the compound path of which you would fill with this gray fill. And then you can change the opacity to make sure that you can still see the map outside of the Sunnington Council, but also it's highlighting the Sunnington Council more, so you will just focus on that as your data. And then once you're happy with how it turned out, you go to File and export the image. Export as a PNG would be preferable for the quality, and save that image. Now the next step would be to call out the parks. And so again, the same step, manually went over and traced all of the parks, and just to make sure that it shows up a lot better, same thing, I added a background layer where it's just the gray fill and changed the opacity to 75 to make sure that the park is highlighted. Then afterwards, I just duplicated the layer where the backdrop is darkened, and there we are. It's drowned out everything a little further, but you can still see that the park is highlighted because I want to highlight 2 sections from the park bridge. Now you can choose to have it as a different color, but I wanted to have it as green, and then I just make sure to highlight it a little better using the red outline. What I did was essentially draw out the park manually, and then I change it to have one for the green one to have the fill as green, and I change the opacity, change the type to soft light to have this image right there. And then afterwards I just essentially copy pasted the path into another layer, and I change that path to just show it as a stroke with pink strokes right there. Now, if you look at it like this, you wouldn't notice it really well, but using the Premiere Pro app and making it into an animation, it will show up a lot better. So once you have all the images that you need, right there, you would go into Premiere Pro and essentially just drag and drop the item, in this case the image, onto these four main layers. The 4 layers on the bottom is for audio and other such stuff. The 4 on the top is for video, images, and primitive objects which you can create inside Premiere Pro. Now, you can see that once I added the image, it's gonna show up as this huge zoom in area, and so you want to drag it to the side in order to expose the edit point right here, and you can essentially just drag it in to scale it down. Try not to drag it into far like I did, which will essentially just lose your image. Now, the good thing about this Adobe Premiere Pro is that once you scale it all together, and so the image isn't stretched. Now, once I scale it down to my desired size, maybe right there, you want the image to be centered. So you would click on Control while press on Control while clicking on the image, and then you just drag it so that the red dot is this center line for facing thing. And yeah, now you have your image in the middle. And once you have that, you need to make sure that all the next images that you've exported into Premiere Pro would be in the same scale, same location, and same spot to make the animation, to make sure the animation works. And once you have all of that in, you can then put it against each other, and you can change the timing via hovering over the edge of the image and like dragging it to change how long the image lasts. And once you have all the images next to each other, if you don't have this animation, it will just flip through from each images. So how do you put in this animation? Well, you go into effects and then go into video transition in the dissolve folder, choose cross dissolve and put it in the middle between these two images. And it will hopefully
within this area there's a green corridor
as
that
how
runs
this
along
video
where
I
the train
made
track is
has
located,
shown it.
all the way from Cosmo Park North in South Sierra to
Now, of course, you didn't see how I added this letter and symbol, but essentially, if you look up here, it's just images that the icons are images that I've downloaded from flaticon.com, and I just drag it to where I wanted it inside the panel, and then I added the text via this text feature, added it in, and changed the font to how I desired. And once I did that, I drag it to make sure it is in time with all my images as well. And to make sure it has this smooth appearing animation, I added the animation called additive dissolve, where it will essentially make the icon and text appear on screen right there. And yeah, that's a small tip and tricks of how you can create an animation similar to mine inside Adobe Premiere Pro. Thank you for watching.